key elements for project management are scope, which is things to do, a statement about the project priorities, business cases, and stakeholders. We'll explore in this episode only scope. Scope can be represented by this triangle. This is one of the most important things a project manager could actually learn about running a project, because this triangle represents all the relevant information that a project manager needs in order for the project to be successful. Let's look at the components. Scope, basically the things you need to do. So you're commissioned to run a project and do a project and create deliverables. Those are the things that you need to do. In order to achieve those things, you need a certain amount of time. It's going to take time to carry out and complete those particular tasks, and it's going to cost a certain amount of money. We call the cost a budget. We call the time a schedule. But overall, within that, a project manager has to be cognizant of the fact that whatever you produce should be at a level of quality. It should have some degree. It should meet some sort of standard towards that. So those are all the components a project manager needs to understand and needs to adjust and make sure that they are in correlation with each other in order for the project to be successful. I can't emphasize this enough. If you can understand this triangle and the four components of this triangle being the things that need to be done, the time or schedule, the cost and the budget, and the quality standards of that, then whenever you're given a task, you always want to make sure that all things are equal, that if you're given something, you're given the time and the cost, and you know to what standard of quality it should be compliant to. If you understand that, you will always have the necessary resources for you to be successful in running any project. As represented here, I've just taken that triangle and expanded a little bit. It's my attempt at humor. I guess this is my happy face of project management. Again, as I mentioned earlier, that if all things are equal and the project manager really does understand this triangle and can address the things, the time, the cost, and the quality to everything that he or she does, then that project manager will be absolutely happy and successful. When we take this triangle, we have to ask ourselves a very important question. Is it reasonable to assume that for any undertaking, things that need to be done in a project, it will take so much time and cost so much while complying to a standard of quality? That's a question we must always ask as project manager. Is it reasonable to assume that if we do something, it's going to take so much time, cost so much money, and should be compliant to a level of quality, to a standard of quality? Is it reasonable for us to ask for what we need in order to achieve that? Is it reasonable? Well, the answer is only too obvious. The answer is yes. So it is reasonable that if we're to do something, we get the necessary time and we get the necessary cost, and we're compliant to a necessary standard for quality. Those are reasonable things. That is the key to this little triangle. This little triangle, if you keep this in mind whenever you look at anything to do with your project and you keep everything in sync within that, you'll be very successful as a project manager. As mentioned earlier, we do have some other key elements to explore, but before we explore those elements, you have to do an assignment. The assignment is the next lesson on this particular course. We really want you to read and study the document from the next lesson. This is a very important document. This document is our case study that we're going to use for the remainder of this project. Everything you do from here on in will be based on this document. Please read it. Please make notes. Please try to understand it as best you can, and it will be used throughout as we continue on.